Look, your body houses the most advanced data storage system ever discovered, and most people have no idea. Scientists at Harvard stored 700 terabytes worth of books in 1 gram of DNA. That equals 70 billion PDF books in a physical space smaller than a sugar cube, a blood drop. Your single drop of blood contains more storage capacity than most computer hard drives. But here's where science gets ridiculous. They focus on the 2% of DNA that codes for proteins, while calling the remaining 98% junk DNA. Imagine calling 98% of a supercomputer junk because you cannot understand what it does. How arrogant. Now pause and consider this question. If DNA can hold 70 billion books worth of information, what information does your DNA contain? Ancient Kemet preserved a teaching that changes everything. Gods are immortal men, and men are mortal gods. This paradox describes your current state perfectly. You are mortal flesh, containing immortal essence. The god sleeps within your DNA, while you live as if you are only human. But wait, let me challenge my own premise here. If you contain godlike essence, why do you experience limitation, aging, suffering? Why does the divine within you appear powerless against physical reality? Because consciousness chose to limit itself. Here's the part that will shake your understanding of genetics. Russian scientist Dr. Peter Gariaev discovered something extraordinary. When DNA samples were laser scanned and then physically removed, the laser continued detecting the same energy pattern for 30 days. The DNA was gone, but its essence remained. This phantom effect means your DNA exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. You walk around with quantum information fields that broadcast and receive data beyond physical reality. But here's where it becomes practical. This same research proved DNA responds to specific sound frequencies and human language. Certain words, spoken at correct frequencies, can reprogram genetic expression. Ancient mantras were genetic programming tools. When you chant specific sounds, you remove genetic obstacles. When you repeat, "I'm the divine blueprint awakening," you activate dormant codes. Sound becomes the key that awakens the God within your genetic structure. But hold on. If awakening were this simple, why does the God remain asleep in most people? Because awakening requires taking ultimate responsibility. Most people prefer blaming genetics rather than owning their power to transform them. Sadhguru teaches, karma means ultimate responsibility. You even take responsibility for your genetics. When you awaken the DNA God, you become a genetic pioneer, upgrading the human template for future generations. You stop being a victim of your genes and become their conscious director. This explains why meditation produces measurable genetic changes within hours. Harvard studies show 8 hours of mindfulness practice switches off inflammatory genes while activating healing sequences. Your consciousness rewrites your genetic expression in real time. Your thoughts become genetic commands. When you stress, you activate survival genes that maintain limitation. When you transcend, you switch on what we might call God genes, genetic programs for expanded consciousness and supernatural abilities. The choice happens moment by moment. The 5-element breath method unlocks this genetic potential systematically. Earth breath grounds you into your ancestral foundation, honoring where you came from. Water breath releases genetic trauma through emotional flow. Fire breath ignites dormant codes with life force activation. Air breath oxygenates DNA with divine energy. Space breath enters the quantum field where genetic programming occurs. Sacred sound frequencies repair damaged genetic codes. 528 Hz, the love frequency, restores genetic integrity. 741 Hz activates creative potential. 963 Hz connects DNA to source consciousness itself. Your mitochondrial DNA carries special significance. Inherited exclusively from your mother, it connects you to an unbroken feminine lineage stretching back 2 billion years. This goddess energy generates life force from pure consciousness. You cannot become God without honoring the goddess within. The 12-strand DNA model explains dormant potential. While physical DNA shows 2 active strands, ancient wisdom describes 12 potential strands existing in higher dimensions. Most humans operate on basic survival programming, while divine capacities remain offline. But here's the paradox that resolves everything. The more you try to force DNA activation, the more it resists. The God within your cells awakens through surrender, not effort. When you stop trying to become divine and recognize you already are divine, genetic programming shifts automatically. Signs of awakening include electrical body sensations, head pressure, spine tingling, sudden psychic abilities, prophetic dreams, ancestral memories surfacing. These indicate genetic remembering rather than new development. Your DNA recalls what it always knew. Now comes the responsibility part. Once awakened, you cannot return to unconscious living. Your enhanced genetics require conscious stewardship. Every thought, emotion, and action affects both personal genetic expression and the collective human genome through morphic resonance. The planetary consciousness shift accelerates this process. Cosmic energies streaming from galactic center activate dormant genetic potential in those ready to receive. Earth's increasing frequency upgrades human genetics automatically, but only in those who do not resist. You live during the prophesied time when sleeping gods awaken en masse. The veils between dimensions thin, making genetic awakening more accessible than ever before. But accessibility does not mean automatic. Choice remains yours. Here's what makes your situation urgent. Those who fail to activate dormant DNA will struggle with increasing energetic frequencies. Your genetic awakening serves collective evolution. You become a bridge between dimensions, anchoring divine consciousness in physical reality. The God within your DNA stirs as cosmic forces intensify. Ancient initiates prepared extensively before genetic activation, learning to handle expanded consciousness while maintaining embodied wisdom. You face the same preparation now. The teaching becomes clear. Gods are immortal consciousness, experiencing mortality to rediscover immortality. Humans are mortal gods who have forgotten their divine nature until genetic awakening restores the memory. Your DNA contains the complete blueprint for godhood. The question that determines your future remains. Will you continue accepting genetic limitation and living as merely human? Or will you embrace the paradox? recognizing yourself as an immortal God playing at mortality, while the divine essence awakens within your cells. The God hiding in your DNA no longer sleeps. The choice to wake up belongs entirely to you.